Hi, I'm Donna Joy Asher from Living Through Heart. Today I'm going to talk about compatibility within relationships. And this is something I'm learning at the moment. Here I am, 51 years of age, and I'm learning about communication skills and compatibility and things like that within relationship. And because I'm in my tantric practitioner training in month 10, and we're getting into couples practices. And a lot of what I'm learning is just how to communicate in general in life, how to be a really good listener. Um, and a lot of that is taken into relationship and intimate relationships, but can be used obviously just in life in general with all relationships, with friends, with family, things like that. Today, what I'm going to talk about is probably more just to do with couples practices, with is compatibility within a couple. But it's really interesting to me that here I am at my age learning this stuff, and I mean, I kind of know it on some level, but it's sharpening up and refining things and actually giving me skills within my own life to use, which is making me a better friend, a better partner, and a better self, really, being a better self. And, we go to school and we learn how to, add up 2 plus 2, and we learn about history and we learn about geography, but we don't get taught how to be. We don't get taught about boundaries. No one ever sits you down when you're in primary school and says, "Hey, what do you want?" I mean, they say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And it's, oh my God, the pressure. What do I want to be when I grow up? What about how do you want to be in life? That's a far more important question. And because of our woundings, because of how we're trying to make shape of the world, because no one ever sits us down and explains this stuff to us, and all of the things that we make up about ourselves and about the world, what we end up becoming and being is often just a shadow of who we really could be or who we actually are, because we're trying to stay safe and we're often just hang out with people who make us feel safe. So they're reflecting back to us what we believe or what we think. And we get with partners, and then we spend our whole time trying to get from them what we need. When in reality, when we know who we are and we know what our wants and needs are, and we know what our boundaries are, and we know how we are safe within our own body, then we can come into relationships with someone and we can actually see them for their three-dimensionality and for who they truly are. When I ended my 27-year relationship with my ex-husband, I don't think he actually knew who I truly was. And I probably didn't know who he truly was. I mean, I think I probably had a better idea of who he was, because I was the one that was always compromising to make things work, to make it be how he wanted it. But even at the end, things that he would say about me or to me would make me realize that he didn't accept who I was. And in fact, if something that I wanted was different to him, or something that I needed was different to what he needed, then I was being high maintenance, or I was being fussy. And, you know, we never communicated properly. Sure, we talked and we talked about stuff, but we never learned to have healthy communication. And so this is stuff I'm going to talk about over the next few episodes, because it's really, really important. And it's part of growing up, part of maturing, and part of being that bigger person, being able to hold space for somebody else and to see them in their three-dimensionality and to not judge them and to try to understand them, even though what they might be saying might be different to what you think and feel. And this is, being a good listener. I think Chantel Raven, my mentor in the Tantra space at the moment, she said that her dad taught her that being a good listener was listening with a willingness to change your mind. And not because you were compromising to stay safe or to keep that other person happy, but because what that other person was saying might actually make more sense than what you currently believed, or might actually be a bigger picture. But most of us, when we listen, we're just listening. And at that same time that we're listening, in our head, we're forming our debate. We're forming our argument for our side so that we can be right. Or we're just listening into this a break that's big enough for us to interject and to take over the conversation and to say what we think. And the truth is that quite often we actually don't know what we really want and need. We're just going off what we learned on how to stay safe. So compatibility within a relationship is super, super important, because being in alignment and compatible means that you need to be this way in 3 different places. So the animal, which is sexually, so see, I'm actually patting down in my sex chakra area, and then heart, emotionally, and then mind, consciously. There's 3 different centers of us, and we need to be met in those spaces, in all three places, for us to be compatible in such a way that we're synchronistically working together and not having to compromise in such a way that is not true to our authentic nature. And this is what happens when there's, incompatibility in a relationship. Normally, one person ends up compromising, and then that person ends up resenting the other person, and then that comes out passive aggressively. And that was me in my relationship. I was the one that compromised, but then I was also the one that was just doing what if I wanted to do something, I would just do it without asking because I knew that they would kick up, or so, which is not fair when you're in a relationship, right? Or I would say, sure, fine, but then I would be secretly resenting them. But because the alternatives were not options to me. So the alternatives were either like not doing it, which I tried a few times, not going along with the plan and actually forcing my plan, because then what I ended up with was a sulky man on my hands. And that was no fun at all. It's kind of like a soggy piece of bread in a sandwich, right? So I would just then compromise because, normally what he wanted to do was just fun anyway. And I could go ahead and I knew I'd be able to enjoy myself, but it wasn't what I truly wanted to be doing. So when you can commit to the other person with a full heart, right? And when you are fully compatible and when you're aware of what your wants and needs are with compatibility, because most of us aren't, and you're aware of what their wants and needs are, and you can choose them within that, then you're not spending all your time trying to change them to get what you actually want or need or secretly need, right? Because it's normally what we secretly need. And that's why these conversations are so important. But when we kind of start relationship, often it's like this chance meeting, or maybe it's internet date or whatever, and we're always on our best behavior, right? When we first meet someone. And we may not speak up when something's not quite the way we like it, because we don't want to ruin the magic of the moment, or it's like that, when you get swept up in that, like how amazing they make you feel and blah, blah, blah. And then you don't want to say anything and create discord or disharmony there because you don't want to risk losing that amazing feeling at the beginning. So you don't say anything, you don't speak up for yourself. And then starts a pattern of compromise, because then, 10 years later, when you do start to speak up for yourself, then incompatibility is there. And yet it's like we think that if we're going to that it should just be this magical thing where we just work together and we shouldn't need to have these conversations, instead of actually having formal conversations around stuff and being true to yourself, and then actively choosing each other and actually choosing to work together and being able to have good communication skills. And, when relationships start that way where you're not quite sure who the other person is or what they want, and then you're just kind of compromising and stuff, and then you get to the point where you're not happy. Neither partner is fully happy because they're not being fully chosen for who they are. They're compromising in different areas that are actually quite important to themselves. But there's always a reason why they shouldn't leave. So it may be just that they're too scared of being by themselves. They'd rather be with someone than by themselves, because then they're not able to sit in the discomfort of being by themselves. And that happens quite often. And people just like, oh, I just like being in relationships. No, you just don't like being by yourself. And when you can actually be truly happy by yourself and joyous by yourself, then you wouldn't choose to be in something that you weren't happy in. And that's where the work is. When I left my husband, I spent a couple of years by myself, not going into relationship, not attracting anything, because I knew that whatever I attracted at that point would be more of what I'd had. And I had to shift my vibrational energy, and I had to love myself so I could receive love and I could start to attract and call in what I truly wanted. And it really does work. But I'll talk more about that another time, about how it works and about the energy of holding that end result and what you want. Today, we want to talk about compatibility. So people don't leave because they don't want to be by themselves, or maybe there's kids involved, or it's like, what would people think? Or, there's all these different reasons for why they don't leave. And instead they stay in a happy relationship. And what is the fucking point? What is the point of being unhappy? Why? I don't understand it personally myself. I mean, now, when I did it for years, but I actually wasn't being honest with myself because I was with a good, kind man. And I couldn't admit to myself that I actually wasn't happy. And on the surface, I was making it happy, 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 and always compromising. We can do this and we can do that. And I kept myself so busy that I couldn't actually be with my feelings. And then one day I realized I was unable to touch joy. I was doing a Joe Dispenza meditation and, elevated emotion, and I just couldn't touch joy anymore. And I just started crying. And I knew that something had to change. And from that moment on, that's kind of like when I started my journey towards ending it. So most relationships start without a conversation, without looking at compatibility, but then they don't end because of reasons. And if you actually took the time to make sure that you were compatible at the very beginning, then you wouldn't end up in the trauma of staying in something and compromising. Hmm. And most of us have actually never taken the time to work out what it is that we truly want in relationship, or what we truly want in lives, and we truly want for ourselves. We kind of just fall into relationships and it feels great and someone's loving us and it feels nice to wake up next to somebody and we're getting something out of it, but we don't really know what we truly want. And when you sit down and you actually work out what you want, and then your partner works out what they want, and then you can have a really good conversation around compatibility, then you can start to see maybe where the gaps are, and you can start to have a really good conversation, allowing them to have their own thoughts and their own feelings, and listening and not attacking. So often we try to make somebody else be just another version of ourselves, rather than actually appreciating who they truly are. So you want to look at what are your wants and needs surrounding those three centers: your animal, your heart, and your head. So sex, how often do you really want it? And here's the thing too, you got to be really real with yourself, because I talked about a process I went through maybe a month and a half ago, where I had stated what I wanted. And then when I was ultimately rejected within that, and I sat with it and I sat with the pain of that, I was actually able to see that, you know what, that even wasn't what I wanted. I wanted bigger than that. I wanted more than that. But I had dumbed it down, trying to just kind of like almost like, hey, can you just throw me the scraps from the table, please? I'm quite happy just with the crust of the bread. I don't need the whole piece of bread. Just flick me some crumbs. That's okay. That's what I was doing, right? And then I couldn't even have the fucking crumbs. But it allowed me to see that it actually wasn't something about me, and the universe wasn't trying to tell me that I wasn't allowed to have. I was just asking the wrong person. And I was asking a person who wasn't capable of giving me what I wanted, even the scraps, right? Let alone the whole picture. The whole picture is so much bigger and so much better when I could hold that energy of wanting to be adored, wanting to be a priority, wanting to have somebody, hold me and listen to me and be able to have good communication with them and have amazing sex with them and be met on all three levels, being able to have fantastic conversations about deep spiritual things and be in the healing space with me and all this stuff, right? When I realized that that's actually truly what I wanted, and committed to having nothing rather than that. Make sure I said that the right way. Yeah. I'm not sure if that came out the right way. But what I'm trying to say there is that I committed to nothing rather than having something less than that. Yeah, that's the right way to say it. So yeah, I realized what I wanted. I held the energy of it. And I'm like, well, if I can't have this, I don't want anything, because I'd rather be by myself than have less than this. And when I was able to do that and I was stepping to that end result of that energy that I wanted, everything changed. So, sex, how often do you want it? What do you want it to look like? Do you just want vanilla sex? Do you want spicy sex? Do you want maybe, a bit of fantasy play? There's nothing wrong with a bit of fantasy play. Do you secretly want things and fantasize about things that your partner doesn't even know about? Maybe they want the same thing. Or maybe they can just listen to you and help you have that fantasy, even if it's not something that they want themselves. Maybe, for them to help you in that field would not be an incompatibility for them. Do you want it just once a month? Do you want to be touched for half an hour before penetration? Do you want to be asked to be penetrated if you're ready? Do you want to be tied up? you know, all these things. What do you secretly want? These things are all fine. So be honest with yourself. What do you want? And then listen without fear to what your partner truly wants. And it can be scary to hear what somebody else wants, because within that, there's always the fear that we're not enough. But knowing that you are enough to start with, right? If you can come from that solid place of self-love and worth and knowing that you're enough and that you are lovable, and really stop making anything that they say mean something about you and your lack of, which is what we do, right? Which is why we attack. Because when someone says something, we interpret into it and weave into it some meaning, which they actually didn't mean. They're just trying to say something about themselves. And then we weave in this whole different thing and we go off on this tangent and then we attack, right? Because we feel vulnerable and we don't feel safe. So this is the thing of communication and, with compatibility is being able to express what you want and need in a safe space. And this is where, what I'm learning at the moment is to help couples do this. And maybe you need somebody to help you do this, to hold this space for you and to be non-judgmental and to be able to say, stop, this person is talking. You need to listen to them and really listen to them and ask them questions to understand them better. So when you say you want to make love once a day, are we talking about a 2-hour session? Are we talking about a quickie? What do you mean here? When you say you want to be tied up, well, what do you want to happen when you get tied up? Do you mean ask questions to find out exactly what it is they want? Okay, so that's the animal side of it. Now, obviously, if one partner wants to have sex every day, wants to get tied up, wants to be dominated or wants to dominate or whatever, and the other partner wants to have vanilla sex once a month, there's a really big incompatibility there. And either partner is going to compromise, or maybe both are going to compromise, but their needs are not going to get met. And they're going to have to sacrifice and abandon the trueness of who they really are. Now, maybe the one who just wants to have sex once a month, maybe their thing is that they actually want to be touched for half an hour before sex. And once that starts to happen, maybe they'll be open to sex more often. Maybe they're just not enjoying the way their partner is touching them. Maybe if they were enjoying the way their partner is touching them, they'd want it all the time. This is where these conversations come in and where honesty and transparency is so important within relationships, but we just leave everything up to guesswork and they get so angry when they can't read our mind. And, remembering that we're not reading their mind either. It's not always about us. It's two people in a relationship. Okay, so the next is the heart, emotions, how do you feel? How do you want to feel? Do you want to be, given declaration of love? And do you want to be like told nice things about yourself all the time? Do you want to get presents and flowers? Do you just want someone that wants to hold you and touch you? What is it that you want from your heart? What is your heart's true desire? And that can be difficult for men because they're often not tapping into their heart. And this is like with Tantra, it's a whole different thing getting a man to move his consciousness just from his sex and up to his heart because his polarity is down there. And that's just the way it is. And a woman's polarity is her heart. And, we used to think that this was like the universe's big joke about, oh, we're so different. But in reality, it's perfect because the woman is there to kindle the man's heart and the man is there to kindle her sex. And it's that yin and yang coming together, which makes that perfect relationship. When both of them are able to be wholly who they are and be authentic within their truth and are compatible. So what do you want in heart, emotions, and share that? And then what do you want from your mind? What are your values? What do you want consciously? What's important to you? What do you want to be able to have conversations around? Does your partner need to be on the same journey as you? Do they need to be into health like you are? Do they need to be into the same diet? Is that, because with the compatibility and with our wants and needs, there are non-negotiables, which are this, no, I have to have this. For me to be authentically in my truth, it has to be this way. But we don't get to force stuff onto someone, right? So maybe it's just like, for me to be authentically in my truth, I need to be eating gluten-free. And I need to be, looking at my health all the time and making wise health choices and exercising. Do I necessarily need my partner to be doing that for me to be in my authentic truth? I mean, sure, it'd be lovely to be on that same page. Do I need it? Is it a non-negotiable? I think probably for me, it's not so much that it would be a non-negotiable, but if they weren't on that page, that there would be other non-negotiables within there or other compatibility issues there. Like if they weren't interested in their health and in fitness, and they probably wouldn't be interested in their mind and in spiritual stuff and having deep conversations. And for me, that is something that I want, definitely. I want to be able to have deep conversations with someone. I want to be able to read books and then philosophically discuss stuff with someone. And I suspect that somebody who is into that level of depth would probably also be into looking after themselves. But maybe they wouldn't be. So maybe that point for me is not non-negotiable. Maybe I'm okay just being healthy myself and they can eat what they want. And as long as they're not trying to force themselves on me, then that's fine. But for me, a non-negotiable is being on that journey, being on that spiritual path and being on the path to wholeness. Because for me to be met where I'm at, I need someone who's there as well with me. Maybe a non-negotiable is one partner wants to have children and the other doesn't. And the other one really doesn't want kids and one really wants kids. And all of a sudden you've got an incompatibility. And for those to either not have children, one is going to have to abandon themselves and really give up on something that was really important to themselves in this life. Or the other one's going to have them and then resent giving up their freedom because of it. Or maybe one wants to travel the world, the other wants to settle down. So you see what I mean? There's things that are, in the wants and needs that are non-negotiables, that are really important, that are not requests, okay? And these are preferences, they're not preferences or requests. They're actually things that make all the difference. And they're part of the authentic being of who that person is. And for them to be able to authentically choose their relationship, that other person has to be in alignment with that thing. But there's also, incompatibility with non-negotiables, which is fine because there can be the dance of the compromise without either partner having to sacrifice themselves. So what I'm saying here is that for compatibility, to be compatible, you can have compromise as long as you're not giving up on something that is really super important to yourself, that is a non-negotiable, that is true to yourself, that would mean that you weren't living your life in your true authentic nature and purpose. So for instance, if you liked a really clean house and they didn't give a shit, and you were always having to be the one that was cleaning, right? Well, there's ways to compromise there. Like, okay, this is making me really unhappy. I really like a clean house. It's really important to me. Can you meet me? Can you keep it clean? And they're like, well, no, I don't want to have to pick up after myself all the time. I don't want to have to clean the bathroom. I don't want to have to, like, when I was a kid, I was made to scrub all this and now I don't want to have to do it. You're like, okay, well, can we get a cleaner? Like, yeah, let's get a cleaner. So once a week, let's get a cleaner. And that way, we're both happy. I've got a clean house. I'm not having to do it. I'm not having to do more than half of my share. They're not having to clean the house to make me happy. Another way that compromise can really work is if what the one partner wants is actually in the other partner's best interest and they can see that. And this comes down to obviously a deep desire within themselves to change and maybe to elevate themselves. So for instance, if one partner is unhappy and their non-negotiable is that they're not with someone who has a deep addiction to something like alcohol, drugs, and the other person has an addiction, then perhaps this person with the addiction can see that it is in their best interest for this compromise to be made where they are able to go through what needs to be done to give up that addiction. And they can see that it will actually serve their higher purpose. So we can get on a new page with something like, okay, well, let's just get a new page, let's change it up. And rather than either of us cleaning, let's get a cleaner. We can have it where what one partner wants is actually in the best interest for the other partner as well. And maybe they just need to support them as they go through that. But it's really about making things work in such a way where it's not compromising the other. So maybe it's like, you know what, he wants to go off and, go and hang out in cars and stuff. She's not interested in it. Does she have to be? No. Unless she has like this non-negotiable, which is, you know, I'm not going to be with someone who's got a thing about cars. And who knows why that might be, right? Maybe something to do with dad or something. Unless there's a non-negotiable like that, then it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you're going to go off with his mates once a week and just like talk car shit and hang out and maybe, go to car shows and look at stuff. No, that's healthy. That's him doing what he wants to do. That's him having friends and like following his passion. Does she have to have the same passion? No, she does not. So, other things that are like maybe things to look at when you're thinking about what your things that you want to need in relationship are, you know, do you want to have date night every week? Or maybe you want every night to be like after 8 p.m., zero phones, just connected. Maybe you don't want to make dinner every night of the week. Maybe you want to share it. Or maybe it's a case of, okay, well, if you don't want to cook, I don't want to cook every night of the week. So I'm going to cook 3 or 4 nights. And then the other 3 nights are up to you. And so you can either get takeaway or you can take me out to dinner. There's this compromise to be had here. How often do you want sex? Do you want, when you have sex, do you want them to shower first so they smell really nice and, put on some nice aftershave for you? Do you want to live together and share finances, or do you want to live together and keep finances separate? You know, and here's the thing, what we want and need, we're allowed to change it. So it's really important to be true with ourselves from the very beginning of what we want and need. And this is a conversation that really needs to be had and updated as you realize that a want or need changes. Maybe when you get together, you didn't want children, and then you realize that you do. You know, I want children. You're okay. You're allowed to change your mind. This is what life is about. Life is fluid. Life is about growing. Life is about evolving. And I find it amazing that so many people kind of grow up and they have this identity of who they are, and then that's it. They kind of like freeze in time and they just go through their entire life with the same identity, with the same worldview. And they spend their entire time backing that up, hanging out with people with that same worldview, not open to expanding it or not open to changing, because that's dangerous. That makes them feel unsafe. So know that your boundaries can also be flexible and fluid, like with what we want and need. And maybe today something is a no, that tomorrow is a yes. And that's okay. As long as you voice it. And as long as you don't stay secretly silent and then like expect them to read your mind and then resent the fuck out of them when they don't, right? That's just really not fair. But also don't feel like you have to defend yourself for what you want and need. You're allowed to have your wants and needs. And maybe there's a reason behind it that you want to share. Maybe you don't. That's okay. Maybe there's a reason behind it that you should share so they can understand where you're coming from. And maybe within the sharing of that reason, you'll find that that want and need may even change. And I've been finding that myself a little bit lately. I will think I have a certain boundary on something. And then when I talk into it, I'm like, well, actually, that could be kind of fun. And maybe I don't want it to be like that, but if it was like this, then I would actually like that. So this is where good communication comes in. And really knowing yourself, spending time with yourself and being honest with yourself and your partner. And remembering that they're allowed to have different opinions to you. They are a three-dimensional being, and you should be curious about what's going on in their head. Some people just, it's like they turn their partner into a cardboard cutout of themselves that sit next to them on the couch every night, and that way they feel safe. And they never really get to know how their partner thinks, what's the quirks. They're not curious. Be curious about who your partner is. And when you're curious about who they are, right, here's the ironic thing. When you turn your partner into a cardboard cutout and put them on the couch next to you and they're just a version of you, you get bored of them because they're not dynamic, they're not changing. And really what we want is polarity to ourselves. So on one hand, we're making them so that we feel safe, but on the other hand, we're bored. But when you can be curious about your partner and you can realize that every day they are different. Every day they are evolving. Every day they're having new thoughts. Every day they're having new creations. And you can be always curious about who they are and what those new thoughts are and how they're evolving. Then you stay in love with that person. They don't get boring, because just as you are always evolving, so are they. And if you can allow them to be who they are without feeling like you have to control that because of some safety thing, and you can just hold that space for them to show up in with zero judgment, then, and if they can do that for you, then you can have the most amazing, most beautiful relationship ever. Okay, I hope you got something out of that. I hope I stayed on track. I did actually make notes this time. As normal, if you want to find out more about me and what I'm doing, check out my personal website, donna@donnajoyasher.com, my Living Through Heart website, which is all about living through heart and healing your soul. So livingthroughheart.com, and my beautiful jewelry business that I have with one of my best friends, Shana, which is savagebohostudio.com. And that will actually, it might take you somewhere else when you're watching this or listening to this, but at the moment it takes you just to our Etsy shop. And this is all jewelry. It's crystal, handmade, copper electroforming. At the moment, I've got a ring electroforming in my laundry. So it's stuff that we're actually making and creating, and we're doing it from heart. So yeah, go check those out. And if you are going to go, and if you do like something in the shop, there's a coupon code I've set up for YouTube, which is the word YouTube. So use that to get a discount, which is my gift to you, to thank you for following and listening and sharing. And I hope that you're getting something out of these little thoughts that I have every week that I'm sharing. And I will see you for the next one.